And welcome to Advantage Radio Ministries and welcome to Second Chances right here at Lift FM. My name is Greg Hennis. We're here each and every Tuesday evening just after 9 p.m. with a wonderful program. And we are so blessed and honored to have people from all parts of the country, all over the globe, and all with a unique and exciting thing to share with us and all exciting work that people do. We are privileged to have people on this program each and every week that really all have one common bond, and that common bond is they live for the Lord, and because of what God did by sending Jesus, we can all have that second chance, and it's a great testimony to hear people that we have every week right here on this program. Today's guest is Jane Rubietta. She is the author of the book entitled Heartbeat of a Mother, and Jane, thank you for joining us here on Second Chances.
Greg, I'm happy to be with you again. Thanks.
It's always great to have you, Jane. If someone's never had a chance to hear one of our interviews in the past, start us off, give us a little bit of background on who you are, where you're from, and give us a little bit of your testimony, how you came to be a follower of Jesus.
Well, I live in the Midwest in the Chicago area. My husband is a pastor. We have 3 kids who are all grown, and I grew up in the church, Greg, but I just didn't get it. I know that I became a believer at the age of 13. I was baptized. It was real, but I didn't understand a whole lot about it. And so when I left for college, I just, didn't see any reason for all those rules that I grew up with. So that was kind of a rough couple of years, and then a guy I'd been dating became a Christian, and he was just like all about Jesus, and I was all about not Jesus. And it was amazing to watch his life change. And I just knew that through him and through a bunch of other circumstances, God was calling me back to him. And so about my junior year, after my sorority president actually committed suicide after she graduated, I just said, I got to come back. I don't have any other good reason to live if Jesus isn't bigger than all the problems and pain I see around me. And I've never looked back. It's not that I haven't had crises of faith, but I've sure never looked back away from Jesus.
Have you ever, over the years, had someone say, boy, I saw how your life changed because you serve the Lord, kind of like you did? Did anybody ever come back to you later on and say, because of the things that they saw in you, that's why they're serving the Lord today?
What I tend to hear is, wow, we're so glad that you've been so open about all your breaking points, because it gives us the permission to be honest about our own, and then to find Jesus faithful in those places.
So the book we're going to talk about today with Jane Rubietta is entitled Heartbeat of a Mother. Jane, give us a little backstory on how this particular book came to be.
Sure. I get to speak all over the world, Greg, and I think the hardest thing I've ever done is be a mom. And I would look around and I'd see all these other perfect little Christian families and all their perfect children, and they're all serving Jesus in missionary capacity somewhere. And we just didn't have that perfect family. And I didn't grow up in that kind of perfect family. And then I meet women all over the world, and there might be an 82-year-old woman who just talks to me about how she's grieving because she wasn't a very good mom, or because her child has left the faith, or she blames her child's problems on the way she raised that kid. And I just found that whatever their age, moms just need some hope. And so it was about, I just started collecting incidences in my own life and in other people's lives of their hope and their hard places, and then I just wanted to really address that because mothering never ends, but it doesn't have to be the end of us.
So there's a line that is in your book that goes something like this: we can't change our past, but we can work with God to become the very best versions of ourselves we can be. Talk to us about that particular sentence I just read.
Mm. We spend a lot of time, whether we're a man or a woman, I think we spend a lot of time regretting where we've been or who we've been or how we've been, and that stops us from living into who God really sees us to be. I just want to be more and more like God sees me to be in Jesus every day. I don't want to be stuck in who I used to be or in the mistakes I've made in the past. And I think most of us drag around an awful lot of our past with us. I just want to stop that.
One of the things you touch on in the book entitled Heartbeat of a Mother, right off the bat, is by suggesting that no family, and for that matter, no mother are perfect. Why do you feel that people need to feel that they need to be a perfect if they're a mom? Why is that a need for perfection?
I think part of it, Greg, is because we look at these babies, whether we adopted them or gave birth to them, or they are our neighbors' kids, and we're basically raising them like latchkey children. We look at these kids and we just think, oh dear, if I mean, this is a life. If I mess this up, I mess up a whole baby. I mess up a whole lifelong adult. And I think we just recognize that it's such a big responsibility, and we just do not want to mess up. And so I think we're just awfully hard on ourselves about it.
Why do you choose hope as the first part that you really choose to write about? Why is hope the first thing you mention, attribute?
Mostly because I think it's we have so little information. We have tons and tons of information, but we have so little absolute wisdom about what we should do next. And again, if we go back to that statement about feeling like if we mess this up, we have really created a calamity with our children. Hope has got to be outside of ourselves. Then it's got to be outside of our own abilities. It's got to rest with God's love and care of this child that God has made.
One of the things that often come up in relationships, especially when there's problems, is the word blame. Tell us, Jane, how we tend to personalize bad choices our children make by, putting the blame on other things than probably where they should be.
I grew up in the South, and so I kind of grew up with this whole idea of image management, where if you look bad, I look bad, and I've actually confirmed that with people in the South. So don't think that's like being derogatory. We did grow up that way, and so we're if our kids misbehave, we as mothers figure it's our fault. If we were just a little bit, if we were smarter, if we'd if we'd just been more patient, we have all this whole long litany of things that we say. But if the blame really comes back to us, we are where the buck stops. If our kids misbehave, it's probably our fault.
We're visiting with Jane Rubietta. The book we're discussing is Heartbeat of a Mother, and we'll have more questions with Jane in just a moment. But Jane, if someone is just joining us on this program and would like to find out more about the work that you do, this book or previous books that you've put out, is there a website that encompasses all those things?
Oh, sure. If you go to janerubietta.com, I've got all my history is up there, my story, my some of my passions, and also the whole long list of books that I've written. I'd love to be part of anybody's life who wants to reach out that way.
Okay, and could you spell that for us for those that don't know how to spell Rubietta?
Sure. It's RUB as in boy, IETTA.com. JaneRubietta.com.
Okay. The if only game. What exactly is the if only game that you reference in the book?
It ties in really nicely to the blame game, because we do. I look at my children, they're all grown now, but I just look at some of their journeys and I think, well, if only I hadn't done this, if only I had done that, and it goes sort of like this. If only I had homeschool my children. If only I hadn't homeschooled my children. If only I hadn't worked full time. If only I had worked part time. If only I had mortgaged the house to pay for my kids' addictions. If only I had been in a sport group. If only I had gotten counseling for my kids. If only I hadn't been a single mom. If only I had been a single, on and on and on, and it is endless. And so the if only game is one that once we start to recognize it, we can step outside of that endless cycle of if only and just say, right, that's possibly maybe true, but the truth is, the real bottom line truth is that our God is bigger than all of our mistakes.
Great way to put it. How does more laughter change one's perspective and their heart?
Well, haven't you been in places where everything is just so serious and then somebody says something or does something and it is so funny? And sometimes it's maybe it's in church, or I've seen it happen at funerals and at weddings. Something funny happens and the tension is just shifted. The whole mood lightens. You can just see it happen on people's faces. And of course, they've corroborated that with all sorts of research, medical research about the physiology of laughter and how it literally has healing effects, but also it releases endorphins and it does all those wonderful things hormonally for us. And so I feel like if we as parents, as we as human beings can begin to deflect some of the tension that just exists in our universe and in our personal lives with laughter, if we could take ourselves a little less seriously and infractions of all of our minute rules that we have as adults and human beings and parents a little less seriously, I think things would just go a whole lot smoother. In fact, I was thinking, Greg, what if all the parents out there who still have kids at home, what if they just said, okay, you know what, we're gonna have stand-up night. Everybody comes and brings jokes, and you all just stand up and you got to tell your joke, and we'll give you thumbs up, and then we'll practice, and what if we just did that? I feel like it would change the dynamics in our families. I wish I had done that with my kids because things were way too serious most of the time.
I think you could say that for probably a lot of families. Jane, why would you say compassion for others, it really starts with compassion for ourselves?
Well, I was with a friend who we knew each other back when our kids were really little, and I just remember who I used to be back then. And what, I look back and I just think, oh my goodness, I was such a mess. I was such a mess. And she said the same thing. I was such a mess. And then we both kind of looked at each other real sober about it all. And she said, but I'm learning to have compassion on that woman and mother I used to be. And I thought, wow, I never thought about that, about just being about a kindness, a graciousness that we can extend to ourselves for our imperfections, knowing that God is so faithful to love us and forgive us and to redeem us and our children. And then if we can do that, if we can move into that place of God's grace for ourselves, we can certainly give that kind of compassion to other people.
We're visiting with Jane Rubietta. The book is entitled Heartbeat of a Mother. Jane, for someone just joining us, could you mention some of the other books that you've put out in the past that maybe they could say, hey, I know that book. Oh, I know who she is.
Oh, sure. One of my most recent books is called Worry Less So You Can Live More. And I wrote a series that I absolutely am crazy about it's the Deeper Devotion series with Wesleyan Publishing. It's got 4 of the books. They take you right through the book of Genesis. It's a daily Bible study. It takes you every day, 4 different books all the way through the book of Genesis in a year. And I was just ecstatic with how God met me in the midst of that process. So that's finding your way and finding your promise and finding your name and finding your dream. So those are my most recent 6 books that have been out in the last year and a half or 2 years.
Wonderful. Back to the topic, Heartbeat of a Mother. one of the things that moms, and I guess pretty much in every relationship, there are probably periods where there's a lot of second guessing. Moms do a lot of that. And the question is, why is that a big thing? Why does that happen so much, Jane?
I think we just take our responsibility for our children so seriously, and we so very much want the best for our kids. And then we see things that don't work quite right. And I mean, I've seen moms who they're years and years later, they missed this sign or they missed that sign, and they're constantly second guessing what would be the right thing to do next, and that kind of doubt it just gets in the way of our actual relationship with our children, and it bogs us down, but it also is very shaming, because of course we don't know always exactly the right thing to do, and that's where we circle all the way back to this whole idea of hope. Isn't God far more passionate and compassionate for our children than we are?
In the book, you talk about there is no tired like mother tired. How do you learn to rest, and what do you mean by the word heart fatigue?
They've done a lot of studies about mothers and fatigue, and they found out that 56% of moms are functioning at a sleep deficit, but the thing that is really fascinating to me is that doesn't actually even encompass what I call heart fatigue, because as human beings, we tend to say yes to an awful lot of things when perhaps we could say no. We have very high standards for everyone, including ourselves, and it's exhausting. And one of the things that I think is taking a huge toll on us that we don't notice is our emotional fatigue. I think that our souls are weary from trying to be everything to everybody, all of our kids, our spouse, our church, our neighborhood, people next door, everybody. We just feel like we've got to be Jesus with skin on, even though we're just one person, and it's exhausting. And the fact that so many women do not find time or steal time even for their own souls is it's not petrifying. It is. It petrifies our soul in terms of just like fossilizing us. We become old before our time.
What is the biggest heartache, in your opinion, that moms face in life?
I'm really grieving the loss of life in Orlando, and grieving the loss of life in all over the world, and I believe I don't feel like this is a trite thing to say, but it seems very obvious that the greatest heartache is to lose someone you love. But I want to expand what that means, to lose someone you love, in terms of like maybe you've lost them to addiction or to a lifestyle that you didn't want, or you've lost them to their pain, or to depression, or to literal death. You've lost them because they've wandered away from the faith, or you've lost them because of rebellion. All kinds of losses. Or maybe one of the great losses is just the grief that we have when our kids who are super gifted just don't find that in themselves, and they don't find God in the midst of all of that. So I would say that loss is one of the greatest griefs and heartaches for moms.
Spiritual free radicals. What do you mean by that?
Well, and you hear about all these medical terms and antioxidants that are supposed to capture those free radicals that are ricocheting around our bodies. They're like loose little bolts of energy that if they hit the wrong thing or they land in the wrong place, they can create all kinds of health problems. And And I think that's true for us spiritually as well. And so I look at that and I think, well, the spiritual free radicals are like those, that anger that you didn't tame, or the depression that you didn't pay attention to, or shame or guilt, or any of the billions of issues that we as human beings deal with. And if we don't pay attention to those, they will ricochet all over and create all kinds of havoc.
Mm. Tell me what you mean, Jane, by healing from heartbreak.
Well, it's hard to, those songs like "How Do You Mend a Broken Heart" and "Is That Even Possible?" And they've done research, and there really is such a thing as a broken heart. There really is something that happens to our hearts in the midst of very difficult things, and the effect of stress on heartache, and of stress on our hearts, and heartache is one of those stressors. And so I think about that, and I realize that there's so many people walking around like time bombs, right? Because their hearts are ready to just explode because they're physiologically in really bad shape, right? Heart disease is one of the big killers in our world. And I think, well, is that true about our souls? Isn't that true about our spiritual heart, that we are so often not paying attention to the pain that we carry with us, and if we do, we don't know what to do with it. And so to invite God into that, and some other people we trust, so that we can move into places of healing, that's what I really hope for all of us.
In the book, Heartbeat of a Mother, one of the things that you suggest is that your own mothering isolated you within your family, their needs and schedule. Tell us what exactly happened.
Well, I ended up, and it all coincides too with us. We moved into we both became freelancers and missionaries, and doing faith-based things, and we didn't have standard income like everybody else in the whole universe, we thought, which is obviously not true. But what ended up happening was that I became so preoccupied and occupied with trying to earn a living and trying to keep everybody in my home happy and involved and getting them where they needed to be, that I isolated myself in the middle of all that, and just began to trim down any kind of friendships because I didn't have time. And that is just deadly for all of us. God said, it's not good to be alone. And boy, I can tell you from my own life, that is so true. It's not good to be alone.
Mm. Why do you say that community invites us to transformation, and exactly how does that work?
Well, one of the things that happens for us as human beings is that we feel embarrassed or even ashamed because of the stuff that doesn't work quite right, whether it's our own issues or our parenting or our family or our job or whatever it is. And that isolates us. We tend to feel embarrassed about that, especially when everybody else looks really happy and successful and they are living the great Christian dream, I sort of say that sarcastically because really, but I look at that and I think in that we pull into ourselves because we don't want other people to know, wow, we are kind of failures spiritually, because if we weren't failures spiritually, everything would be rosy like it is for everybody else. So, but that isolation is deadly, and what God is inviting us into is community that asks us hard questions, community that says, it sounds like there's pain in your voice, or I'm hearing that laugh, but it sounds angry, or what is how is your relationship with your husband right now? How's your relationship with your wife? Because it just seems like there's some friction there. I mean, what if we had people in our lives who dared to ask us those kind of questions? If they love us enough and they have earned the right to do that, wow, we would be a transformed community, wouldn't we?
Mm-hmm.
We'd take that seriously.
Mm. Finally, one of the other things you allude to is that it is not good to mother alone. Tell us why.
Mothering is in particular isolating. 45% of moms work outside the home, at least on a part-time basis, and but even so, the mothering part of our journey often takes place in our homes by ourselves without a whole lot of other significant people in our lives, whether you're a single mom or not. And so the questions, the shame, the I don't know what else I should do, I can't figure out what's next, I'm ready to, I love my kid, but I think I'm really super angry and maybe I'm dangerous. I mean, everybody goes through those kind of places. It's not good to go through them alone. You got to have some people you can bounce that off of, who can just sort of help you come back to center. We really need that.
Well, obviously, a mom's job is a big one. It's an important one, but obviously there's many facets that make it to be a perfect situation that God really intended. But obviously, Jane, I'm sure that there are many moms that are in those difficult places that you kind of discuss in the book, and probably are looking for an opportunity. Maybe they've were drawn to this program and they've heard what we're talking about, and maybe they're looking for some support in prayer. Maybe they're looking to get their lives right with the Lord. But in either one of those cases, Jane, would you be willing to lead our listeners in a word of prayer?
Oh, I would be honored, Greg. Thanks. Lord God, I thank you so much that you formed us in our mother's womb, and that you have said we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And we look at our lives and we think, well, maybe not. We look at our mistakes and we think, probably not. We look at our kids who are not perfect and we say, wow, maybe I'm just a mistake. God, I stand against that, and I thank you that you are the God of all the universe and that you do all things well. And so I pray that you would give moms everywhere and women everywhere and men everywhere and fathers everywhere hope in your great love, your rich love, your deep love. And Lord, I pray that you'd give us all wisdom as we seek to be all that you've created us to be. And Lord, I pray that you would help us in Jesus' name receive the great love you've offered us in Christ Jesus, and that you would fill us with that love to overflowing like you promised in Romans chapter 5. And with that love spill over into all of our relationships, Lord. Fill us full with yourself so that we can love well. We ask it in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Our guest today on Second Chances has been Jane Rubietta, the author of the book entitled Heartbeat of a Mother. Jane, one more time, if folks would like to learn more about the work that you're involved in, this book or any of the previous books that you've had the opportunity to put out, could you share a website with us?
Oh, sure. It's JaneRubietta.com, RUBIETTA.com. And this book is a 6-week Bible study with a daily devotional and questions you can download from my website. So it just tries to fit everybody's needs.
Well, I got to tell you, great stuff. Jane, thank you so much for joining us here on Second Chances.
It's great to be together. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you so much. Tune in next week for more Second Chances right here from Advantage Radio Ministries on Lift FM.